What is good, people? What is good? This is Mocking with the Stars. Tonight's star is Andrew Cooper. Coop, a fiasco over there on the Twitter machine from Fantasy Alarm, also known as the Tight End Whisperer, and you can refer to him as such. We got a rookie mock for you guys tonight. We're going to get Andrew's thoughts on a lot of these free agent. The free agent movement today was kind of wild. And it started off very swiftly, I might say. Within 12 minutes of free agency, the legal free agency tampering period starting, DeAndre Swift was off the board already. Thoughts on DeAndre Swift right away, being the first one off the board?
I'll tell you this, man. And here's the thing with free agency. I've come to realize, I was talking to Jax Falcone about it this week. I think I've cracked the code on how it actually works here. I think if a team wants to negotiate with a free agent, there's like an unspoken rule that like until they basically say like, hey, we're done here, you can't go in and talk to that guy. But I think there is a certain point where teams will be like, hey, you know what, go ahead. And that's why we get all these deals day one. And you only have issues if a team wants to press the tampering charges, right, dude? So if you look at like Jonathan Gannon, where the Eagles and the Cardinals did have the issues and they did press that and did get the tampering pick, it happened with the Chiefs. Those, I could see that happening with guys like Calvin Ridley. We're like, hey, we're still negotiating with this guy. But clearly these teams are talking. No, I mean, like you can't come up with these insanely specific deals in 3 minutes, right? 15 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah,
so it's got to work that way.
It was super quick. I agree that there's got to be some talking behind the scenes. You know, call it illegal if you want to, but right. some of these deals are just astronomical.
As long as the team doesn't care, it doesn't. I mean, like any one of these teams could come out and be like, "Hey, you tampered with this guy." There's no way, right? But anyway, like on the Swift deal, like I'll tell you this: for these backfields, you always have what I always do for Dynasty. Look at the contracts of the people currently with the team, because it doesn't impact everyone equally. People are like, oh, okay, it's Khalil Herbert versus Roschon Johnson. Well, the difference is Khalil Herbert gets to leave next year in free agency. Roschon Johnson's under contract for the next 3 years, man. And DeAndre Swift just signed a 3-year deal, at least 2 of which he's going to be guaranteed to be there. So Roschon Johnson is now stuck. I mean,
well, let me ask you this way. I mean, you just brought up a very, very good point on, you know, when they bring in somebody, we also need to look at the contracts that are allegedly sitting behind him. We should be doing that as fantasy players when we're looking at whether we want to target these players to add to our dynasty rosters or even in redraft, correct?
Right. And that's what I spent the last month doing. You saw the article every single day saying, hey, by the way, you can go to the Bears article and say, hey, by the way, Roschon Johnson is one of the most volatile assets right now, because he's either going to be competing for the starting job, or if they bring in a high-end guy, he could be in a tough spot. Now, DeAndre Swift isn't exactly the end of the world. They didn't bring down the, Josh Jacobs hammer or, Saquon Barkley, where it's just like this guy is better in every phase of the game. There's a possibility that Roschon Johnson still can carve out a role. It's just more difficult now because you have a guy that ran for 1,000 yards last year coming in, right? So he's going to get the early down work. And we've actually seen Swift catch the ball pretty well in Detroit. Now, you look at Nick Sirianni, he doesn't like throwing running back screens. That's why they throw a ton of screens to Goddard and the wide receivers, not a lot of running backs. So maybe that's why Swift didn't do as much. But Roschon's got to find a way to carve out at least half the job. He could very well just end up being the clear backup. And that happened to a lot of guys today, right? Like Tajay Spears, we thought was going to take a big step. There's a few guys still hanging around, like what's going to happen with Zamir White. But I mean, there's a lot of those guys that took those hits today, man.
Yeah, Coop, we will get into some of those. Let's get on with what the people came for. Yeah. And that is a rookie mock, 12-team Superflex tight end premium. I'm going to go ahead and get this mock started off here. You are sitting in the 101. I want to go ahead and let everybody in the mock know that we are starting real quick. Starting.
Yeah. While you're doing that, shout out chat. What's up, Wendy? Yes. What's up, Chris B? Jack Stenson in the house. That's my boy Jack.
I was just fixing to say, you have the fans are in abundance for my boy Coop here, getting it started. Coop, what are you thinking here at the 101? We always say draft for talent, trade for need. Is there any way in a Superflex format that it is not Caleb Williams at 101, it's Marvin Harrison Jr.?
So it is, honestly, if that's what you truly believe. I mean, you want to watch me take Brock Bowers right now?
I mean, you are the quarterback whisperer.
I mean,
I
I'm
have
not
been
gonna. I can't do it.
surprised.
I can't do it. I can't do
I
it.
mean,
Because the thing is, you have
Yep.
to. My opinion is this: and again, like you said, I tweeted it the other day. I said draft for talent, trade for need,
Mhm.
and that for me factors in format. If you were to tell me this was tight end premium and it was 1 point per reception for everybody and like 2 points or 3 points for tight ends, then maybe we go there. I'm assuming it's 1.5 points per reception, right?
Yeah, I mean, any tight end premium. I don't think, at least in my opinion, unless it's a 3 point.
Right,
I don't
exactly.
think I think it's all pretty much lumped in the same, especially in these rookie mocks.
Right.
When it comes to the tight end premium.
So yeah,
Calvin,
so I
good
mean,
evening, Calvin.
you're drafting the most talented player. So like I look, and especially at these early ones, right? Like if you're in a league that is either doing the rookie draft before the NFL draft, which to me is practically Devy, or if you're in like a startup draft now, I my rankings and everything is going to skew heavily towards how much I believe they'll succeed at the NFL level and how much I believe they're going to go in the first round. So, the way and again, we'll talk about the picks as we get there because I don't want to spoil anything
Right.
or change the way people draft. But for me, I look at it and I say, okay, there's 3 quarterbacks that I'm fairly confident are going to go at the very top part of the first round, and there's 2 wide receivers I know for sure are going to go there, and probably another one, and then a tight end. Those guys are all in some degree going to be the very top of my rankings right now because I don't know. It's like even with whoever you rank QB4 or even who you rank QB3, we've seen mega slides with
Mhm.
guys that we didn't foresee it, right? But there's never going to be that with Caleb Williams or Marvin Harrison or Drake May or Malik Neighbors. So I have no problem with anybody picking any one of those guys at one at this moment because if you believe in the talent and you think they're the most talented player, do them.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna talk a little bit about it on yesterday morning. The guys from Dynasty After Party, they did a startup mock, and I'll reference a lot of that in
Yeah.
this mock tonight to basically see your thought process in a rookie mock compared to where certain players landed in the startup mock yesterday. There's a few of them that were really super interesting to me on how they fell and where they fell or
Right.
how far apart they fell compared to what I guess we would be used to when we're just this time of year just rookie mocking. When you do a startup mock and then look at a rookie mock comparatively, it's quite interesting where some of these players go. But Marvin Harrison off the board, number 2, Malik Neighbors 3, Drake May, Jaden Daniels are your top 5 picks on this mock. But I'm going to reference it like I just said. Yesterday's mock, speaking of Marvin Harrison, went off the board as wide receiver 4 overall. JJ, Chase, and Lamb were the 3 ahead of him. Are you okay with that? Do you think there should be another player above him?
So for me, I judge those picks based on, to be honest, especially in a startup, because startup dynasty is the most serious draft you can do, right?
Mhm.
Like in your redraft, you screw it up. It's like, you know what, kick your
It's
feet
for a
up,
year.
set your roster. It's very like we're talking about your future here. You know what I mean? And some of these buy-ins, I mean, like it's serious stuff. So I actually would never judge a pick like that until I see the next couple picks. If you go out and you take in my opinion, take Marvin Harrison at 4 overall, and then your very next pick is like, Derrick Henry, then I judge it because you're not building in a certain direction. You know what I mean? For me, I like to play to win now. So I draft older guys. I have no problem with that. If you're playing for the future and you do load up with Marvin Harrison and all these young guys and draft picks and quarterbacks and tight ends who age longer, right? Then I have no problem with it because you had an idea and you executed, right? And I love when people do that because then it makes it very easy for me to trade with them. If I look and through 2 rounds, I look at somebody who I draft the stars and they draft young guys. I start saying, hey, where do we make some trades here? Where do you and I swap? You can have my picks, right? And we'll figure it out. And then I win now and they win later. I've executed that plan multiple times. So for me, that's how it goes in the startups. In these drafts, though, this is where I think you should purely be executing just based on talent and what you believe is going to happen next. And I'll let you talk because I'm on the clock right now.
Yeah, that's fine. Brock Bowers goes 5. Odunze goes 7. I'm sorry, Brock Bowers goes 6. Odunze goes 7. Bo Nix, the 4th quarterback off the board. Is that Brian Thomas from LSU, JJ McCarthy, Troy Franklin, and Lad McConkey, who keeps moving up draft boards as we speak. I mean, the next one, he could be at 5 or 6. He could be ahead of Bowers here very shortly, the way he's moving up draft boards. But I'm going to back up to the Brock Bowers one here. Brock Bowers, we know he is the elite tight end that's coming out this year. Yesterday, in that same mock, in that startup mock, and if y'all want to go check out that mock, go to the same YouTube page you're on currently. It is Club Fantasy FFL Dynasty After Party. Yesterday morning startup mock. Brock Bowers was the first tight end off the board, falling at 306. He was ahead of Laporta, Andrews, ahead of McBride, ahead of Kelsey. Thoughts?
Hey, I'll say first, hey, chat, use a little more clock in this mock draft, dude. This thing's going to be over in a minute. All right.
Oh, no. If we get done with this, we got plenty of free agency.
We got plenty to talk about. Yeah. Use a little clock so we can chat. Yeah. But no, for real, I mean, the thing with Brock Bowers, man, is that he's a different class, and he's a different type of player where he could immediately go in and be the exact perfect thing for fantasy football, which is what Mark Andrews does. He's classified as a tight end, but he plays 85% of his snaps at wide receiver. He blocks on, in some of these seasons, he's blocked on less than 1% of his pass plays. One season he blocked on 1 pass play. He's not a classical tight end in that sense. Evan Engram, right? And what happens when you have a guy like that is that not only doesn't mean they're not inline blocking and running shallow A-dot routes, but they're lining up and taking a wide receiver out of the game and giving themselves a much easier path to being a top 2 target on the team, right? That's why we like Kyle Pitts so much, is that they go out, right? And they just did it in free agency today. They went and got Charlie Warner, who is a great inline blocking tight end, right? And that guy is going to play tight end, and Pitts is going to play wide receiver. It's the perfect setup for what we want to see for fantasy football purposes. So with a guy like Brock Bowers, I have no problem. If you believe that that's his future and he's going to go to the Chargers at 5, and they're going to if the Chargers were to release Mike Williams and then draft Brock Bowers at 5, I would have no problem with people ranking Brock Bowers 1 in their dynasty book. I know I wouldn't do it myself, but I wouldn't turn around and be like, that you're stupid. I don't even think I would say you're stupid if you want to take him at 1. It's I think he's going to be that good of a player.
Yeah, I think he's probably he's put himself on an island in this tight end arena that we all have questions about, right? It's Brock Bowers and then everybody else. But so ultimately, as the tight end whisperer, we know, again, Bowers is tight end 1 in this class. But overall, if you had to rank him right now, without him touching an NFL field, are you putting him ahead of Laporta? Are you putting him ahead of Kelsey? Are you putting him ahead of Andrews? Or whereabouts in the rankings is he without?
Hold on 1 second. I'm on the clock with about 10 seconds left.
Talk through it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. That's why I was saying slow down a little bit. So yeah, I don't know. I think I'll just take whoever auto picks me. Michael Penix. There we go.
Well, I should have just went ahead and
I was going to take him anyway. I don't care. Okay. So because again, it's this type of year when it comes to the stuff, I'm just leaning into at this stage, we have no clue outside of even at running back. It's hard to say who even is going to not even just be the first guy, but who's going to get drafted inside the top 3 or 4 rounds. Marshawn Lloyd, great player. I like him a lot. I love the things that the guys I respect have been saying about him, like Derek Brown and Thor Nystrom over there. But he could go in the 5th or 6th round, right? And then all of a sudden it's you just used a 2nd round pick on a guy like that. Whereas I know Michael Penix is going to go somewhere in the 1st or 2nd round and get a legitimate shot to play quarterback in the NFL. So that's where I stand right now. Once we get out of these first couple rounds, with my 2nd round pick, Xavier Worthy, why did I pick him? I picked him because he's incredibly fast, and because the one knock we have on him is that he doesn't weigh a lot. Well, over the past couple seasons, that line of thinking has been proven wrong on multiple occasions now with Devonta Smith and Tank Dell. We have to change the way that we're moving, right? And same goes for tight end. You talk about some people historically have been saying for a long time that they have to be this 2-way tight end that can block and catch, or else they're not going to be on the field. Well, Mark Andrews in his second year, he only played 40% of the snaps, and he finished at tight end 4 just because he played every single pass play. So for me, when I go through and I look at the tight ends, I'm thinking about who can be an every down player would be great. But at the very least, who could potentially be playing wide receiver and lining up for a meaningful number of snaps there, right? So I look at, Bowers is one for me. Sanders, I wish he was a little bit faster. Like I wish that's the missing piece for him, is that he basically is now, he could have had the profile of a very high end option, but because of the speed now, his profile is more Zach Ertz, right? And when you hear Zach Ertz, you think, oh, that's a great fantasy player, but he only has one 1,000-yard season in his entire career at age 28, right? He had 156 targets. So Sanders, for me, I still love him. I think I still have him as my tight end too, but now the tier has grown. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let me run through this round 2 real quick while you are on the clock here in just a minute. Xavier Worthy at the 2-1, Trey Benson at the 2-2, Adonai Mitchell at the 2-3, Breland Allen at the 2-4. Keon Coleman is interesting. He seems to be sliding right now at the 2-5. Jaden Brooks at the 2-6. Is that, what's his first name? Wilson I believe it's out of Michigan, right?
Yeah.
At the wide receiver there. I can't remember his first name now.
Who I like. It's Roman Wilson. I like him. And again, you know that I've gone through free agency. I still need to do my real deep dive, but I do like Roman Wilson is the kind of guy that I'll give. And I'm a big production metrics guy, but I'll give a guy like him a pass to a certain degree if people are giving JJ McCarthy a pass, because we've seen this with Jim Harbaugh. He wants to slow the game down. He wants to beat the snot out of you, and he doesn't care about how he wins. I mean, we're going to complain about JJ McCarthy not throwing the football when they won every single football game. And under Harbaugh, I've seen a guy like Nico Collins go out and not produce because they didn't throw a ton. So and look at Nico Collins last year, right? So everything else, all the other boxes are checked for a guy like Roman Wilson, except for the team didn't throw the ball a lot. I mean, Puka Nacua coming out of BYU, all these boxes are checked, and the yards per route run is high. But then we say, because he went to this school, now he can't be good. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but Roman Wilson, I'm going to need to see more issues, but in terms of everything else, besides the fact that the volume wasn't high, because he got a good percentage of that volume. So Roman Wilson, I'm in on. Sorry to hijack there, but you gave me the opportunity once you asked about it. Yeah,
absolutely. And Ryan in here saying everybody is scared of the Keon Coleman 40, and he's going to take it as a value, that keeps dipping. And I agree. I watched him being where I live. I'm only an hour from FSU Stadium, and watching what he did. He's a ball hawk on the outside.
Yeah, and he
plays a lot faster than that 40 was.
Right, and he is very impressive for his size. But the thing is, you have to be careful with things like hurdles and stuff like that, because I see Tommy Tremble hurdle guys all the time at the NFL. Does that mean Tommy Tremble is going to be a star? It's
he's
for
not.
Me. hey, who knows? Hayden Hurst is out. You never know. But no, I don't. It's not looking.
It was that one time.
Right. I mean, he gets handoffs and stuff, but the thing that scares me more for Keon Coleman, he is just such a high risk, high reward guy. The thing that scares me for him is you go and look at similar players that got drafted in that range, but didn't have the production scores that he had, and we're talking about I don't know, some comps that JJ Zachariason has pointed out in that range is Kelvin Benjamin, and there's
same a few, school too, by the way.
Yeah, and Philip Dorsett and some of these guys that the NFL teams took a risk on them, but ended up getting burned. Now, for me, Keon Coleman falls into the category of if the NFL teams are willing to take a risk, I might. If he falls to the 4th round or beyond, I'll just cross him off my board entirely. And that's just my personal philosophy on these guys that don't fit the profile I like. Because I put them in buckets. I put them in buckets, Jay, where it's guys I like that go early draft capital. We like guys I like that go late draft capital. In fact, I'll even move guys I don't like that get the draft capital ahead of guys I like that go late. A lot of times, it's just the odds of you hitting on the day 3 pick that breaks out is quite honestly bad.
Yeah, the
And
Isaiah Pacheco's of the world.
it's just, and thinking that running back and tight end, I'd much rather take a shot. It's just you got to understand, if you take all the day 5 picks and day 3 picks and put them together, they break out less than 5% of the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you start digging into the names, you realize that the number is actually even lower, because like Julian Edelman was a quarterback in college.
Right.
Pierre Garcon went to Mount Union. He was a day 3 guy. We all know why Tyreek Hill slid in the draft. Antonio Brown was legitimately crazy. So like the people that actually slide.
How dare you?
I mean, dude, Greg Gabriel said it, not me. He was like, Greg Gabriel came out, the Bears, like former scout. He was like, Antonio Brown, he slid in the draft. Everyone knows why he slid, because he's crazy. And then Bears fans were all over him. They were like, wait a second, you knew this guy was good and you didn't take him, right? But I mean, that's the way it goes sometimes. So I look at it and it's like the odds of you correctly picking who's going to be the next Puka Nacua or Amon-Ra St. Brown are incredibly slow. And you have to remember that a lot of people that like tout those guys are also touting everybody. You know what I mean? So like they're selectively picking and choosing their hits. Maybe there were a handful of people out there that didn't like any day 3 guys, but knew this one guy would be good, and kudos to them. But I don't know. You got to be very careful chasing guys that fall like that, even if you loved them in college, Jay?
Yeah, I hadn't really put it together, but I did see the tweet that JJ put out there with the comp that he had for Coleman. And
who do you have?
Where he, I believe it was the guy that went to FSU that eventually ended up in Buffalo and busted out, the wide receiver.
Mike Williams? No, how long ago?
The one you just brought up.
Oh, Kelvin Benjamin.
Kevin Benjamin.
Oh, yeah.
And now that you say it again, it's just like, oh my goodness, yeah, that
is scary.
A scary thought that is they are the exact same player.
Right.
Ryan needs you to explain the Theo Johnson disrespect.
Honestly, it is disrespectful. I would have taken him. I took Gene Bell, but I have him ranked right with Gene Bell. And I'll tell you, like if you look at the people that lean heavily into athleticism, as you should at the tight end position, then Theo Johnson should be ranked a lot. You could argue that Theo Johnson should be ranked tight end too. There's an argument to be made that based on his size and what he did at the combine, that he should be ranked tight end too. I have to see it, right? So what you have, the way it breaks out here, is that Brock Bowers is like super mega star. He's a wide receiver that plays tight end. He's cheating, right? Then after that, you have real tight ends. Jatavian Sanders is a guy that incredible hands, man. Incredible hands. He on 67 targets in his last season. How many drops do you think he had?
It's got to be less than 10 if you're asking the question, right?
0.
Wow.
No drops. He caught every.
What's less than 10? I was right. I win. I win the game.
You won, man. You nailed it, dude. Yeah, you actually crushed that one. Yeah, less than 10 for sure. By 10, he didn't drop the ball. He fly trap hands, but because he doesn't have the prerequisite speed to break away, right? And what I mean by that, for everyone listening, the short cheat sheet is this: 4.5 or under is difference-making speed. We're talking about guys that can rip off monster plays. Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram, right? Even George Kittle at 4.52 has more 40-plus yard plays than any other tight end since I've been tracking it, and it's not even close. The only two that have double digits are him and Kelsey, and he's the only guy that has multiple 70-yard plays, 80-yard plays, right? So that's like the high-end speed. Anything 4.55 to 4.65 or so, we're cool with that. You know what I mean? Like that's where Kelsey lives. But those guys aren't going to rip off 60-yard plays, so they need targets. Anything over 4.7 or around 4.7 or plus, they need to get peppered with targets. And that's where Jatavian Sanders lives, where for him to have 1,000-yard season, he does need like 120, 130 targets. Zach Ertz ran like a 4.76, so he's a little slower than that, but he needed 150 to get his only 1,000-yard season. So Sanders is probably the safest pick. After that, you're looking at Jaheim Bell, who he's basically slower Chigakonkwo. I took him because he's a guy I think could play slot for a team, and that's all we're trying to chase. But after that, I mean, you're looking at guys that it's so hard to paint a picture of like, oh, this guy is all of a sudden going to be a top 2 target on an NFL team. That's why I rarely do draft tight ends. If in 3-round drafts, I'm probably just taking Brock Bowers and nobody else, to be honest.
Right. And Ryan says he's got Johnson as his number 2. He was typing that as you started talking. And then Jack says he picked Bucky Irvin, but he wanted Theo. So he's definitely on people's radar. As far as this goes, back up real quick. Halfway through the second round, we had Roman Wilson, Blake Corum, Ricky Purcell out of Florida, Jaden Wright, and Sanders, and then Lloyd rounding out the second round. Coop went with Penix in the third to start it off.
Before we move on, I want to hear while we're talking Ricky, man. Like, what's the take, dude? You got boots on the ground, man. You
man. I mean, listen, he is. You saw it. You saw it in the combine. There's not a ball that gets by him. Like you were talking about with Theo with his hands, and he catches damn everything. If it's within his wingspan, he's catching the ball. He's probably. I'm not going to say I'm going to comp him to the guy, but he's a slot receiver that can go across the middle. He's not scared to go across the middle. He's going to be there for his quarterback. I had a buddy of mine drop the mic, asked me the other day about him. And I truly, if I can get him on one of my squads or any of my squads, I'm getting him. He's that good of a receiver. But he didn't just, he's not just Florida. You got to remember, he was out in Arizona State, rather, and then transferred to Florida. He did the same thing in Arizona State. He was that good. And that's why Florida went and got him when he jumped in the transfer portal. But listen, if the Bucs made a trade today and got rid of Carlton Davis and picked up a 3rd-round pick, I'm hoping, and I don't know that it's going to happen, but I'm hoping that pick is for Ricky to come down there and join the Bucs. They got rid of Russell Gage today. If he can come down there and be another Chris Godwin type of player, where you can have Mike Evans on the outside, Chris Godwin and Ricky Purcell in the slot, oh my Lord. You've got an offense for Baker Mayfield then.
Now, with a guy like Ricky, do you think he can play on the outside as well? Because the trajectory for Chris Godwin and for Cooper Kupp and Keenan Allen, all these guys, CeeDee Lamb as well. CeeDee Lamb as a rookie played 94% of his snaps in the slot. It wasn't until Amari Cooper was gone that he became a full-time guy. Like, do you think he could go that route, or is he the kind of guy that ends up being more of like a Tyler Boyd or a Cole Beasley that, successful NFL player, multimillionaire, but it never really ends up being a full-time every down type guy?
No, I think he can be a full-time every down guy. I mean, the dude, I think he can line up on the outside. He's 6'1". Right. He runs a 4.4.
What more do you need?
The speed to get out there. What do you? I mean, and he's got hands. I absolutely think he can. I just think he's set up to be a dynamic slot player. In the same eyes that we see Cooper Kupp, in the same eyes that we see Chris Godwin, that type of player that is not, and he's not scared to go across the middle and take the hit. And I think that's the big plus for him. And I think everybody saw that at the combine that he does have those sticky. He doesn't need the gloves. He has the sticky on his hand already.
That's the cheat code for fantasy. Is that the guy that can go inside and then stays on the field for 2 wide. That is the cheat code for these crazy high upside seasons. You know what I mean? Like with an incredibly valuable role for real life football is just being the big dog on the outside, the Mike Evans that just fist fights everybody and does the hard job and gets jammed, right? But the days of that being the position that has like the crazy super high upside, like it used to be back with like Des Bryant and Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace, and those guys. I think those days, I think people are realizing that like that's not the best spot to put a guy for production. He needs to be Calvin Johnson and just be unstoppable for you to put a guy there when it's easier to generate. Like you see how much Garrett Wilson and CeeDee Lamb are playing in the slot. I think teams are realizing it's the best way to get production for your guys.
Well, I think you see that with what Cincinnati's done with both Chase and Higgins. Right.
Yeah. Higgins does get
adding Tyler Boyd to that.
Higgins gets beat up out there. And I'll tell you what, if Higgins is gone, like I think people aren't realizing that that might not be a good thing for Jamar Chase. Like Mike Evans is a shield for Chris Godwin. Like his presence makes Chris Godwin have these monster seasons. Emmanuel Sanders playing with Demaryius Thomas had his best seasons. He did not have his best seasons when he was like, a focal point of other options on like the Steelers or the Bills. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you started off round 3 with Michael Penix. I have questions here because not on the pick itself, but Kirk Cousins is now an Atlanta Falcon, or it will be an Atlanta Falcon after signing his new ungodly deal to move back home. With that, there is a very, very, very real possibility that picking at 11, they could take a quarterback, whether that's J.J. McCarthy, whether that's Michael Penix, whoever. Does it move the needle for either one of them going to Minnesota? I mean, J.J. still went in the first round of this mock, but does he move up knowing that you have J.J., knowing you have Addison, knowing you have a Hawk to throw to?
I mean, I personally think the way it used to work is that guys were set to sit for a while. Like quarterbacks were, you didn't expect your rookie to start. Like it was almost like Peyton Manning was kind of the first one of those guys. And Peyton Manning came out and threw 28 interceptions as a rookie. Hey, no one's ever going to beat that record because no one's ever going to subject their rookie to that kind of pain the way that Bruce Arians and the Colts at that time did for Peyton. They were just like, you know what, dude, we put the whole franchise in your back. You're going to go out there, and if you die on the field, you die. That's basically what they said. Like that does happen though now, still kind of with like
this is why we took you over Ryan Leaf. We want you to die.
That's even Ryan Leaf, dude. Same thing. But like, I mean, that's what they did to Bryce Young. So I think that's what's going to happen. Like the teams that take Caleb Williams and the Commanders who set themselves up for this by basically, not giving Sam Howell what he needed to compete. They traded away the defensive players. Like those two teams, the quarterback's going to be starter from day one. Even with the Patriots, though, I could see the Patriots not starting whoever they take at 3, even if they take quarterback at 3. I could see the starting quarterback for the New England Patriots being a guy that's played with Alex Van Pelt before, whether that's Joe Flacco or Jacoby Brissett or one of those guys. I could see that happening. So with a guy like Michael Penix, obviously, if he lands with the Vikings, I want to see him start, but I could see that whole range of guys, the J.J. McCarthy's and the Jane Daniels and the Penix. Like, I'm not drafting them in my Dynasty rookie draft and crying and going boo-hoo if they don't start, because I'm drafting for talent. I'm drafting for what I think will be successful for my format for the long term. And when I looked at what was left and what I looked at as Michael Penix, and I'm saying to myself, okay, I think he's going to at least get a shot. Whereas all the names after him in the draft, I don't know if those guys are going to go day 1 or day 2. I don't think a lot of them are. You know what I mean? And like, if one of those wide receivers goes in the 5th round, then I'm never even going to consider him in my real rookie draft. So I'm going to focus now on guys I think are going to get a real shot, which I would have taken Marshawn Lloyd there. I would have taken Jatavian Sanders. I would have taken Jalen Wright. Pretty much anyone in the 2nd round, because you already know I like Roman Wilson. Right. I like Jonathan Brooks. Keon Coleman is, that's somebody just taking a risk. Braylon Edwards, another one that's high risk, high reward, right? Have you ever seen anyone take the path that Braylon Edwards has taken, where he was like a linebacker, like recruited as a linebacker, and then they switched him over. He was also, he also skipped his last year of high school. So he was like 17, like crazy path for that player and a very interesting prospect. But I could see him either being amazing or being the next, like, I don't know, Brandon Jacobs.
Didn't he change positions just so he could get on the field? I thought that's.
Yeah, but he could have waited though. Like he went there so young, like he could have waited. And then he was like, nah, like it's just monster. I don't know. What do you think about him? Do you like him?
He's one player I haven't looked that much into. I just heard about his story.
Me too. Yeah.
And it's one of those ones that's like, okay, that's somebody I want to keep an eye on.
I root for those guys for sure.
Yes. Yeah, because again, he is the younger prospect coming into the league. Does that mean that he's going to last a little bit longer? Does that mean he's going to get, does he have more tread on the tires? So, there's those are, especially in Dynasty, that's something that I think everybody looks for, right? Who can I have the longest, or who can I have that's going to have the most value the longest?
Right. And an important thing for Dynasty, and this goes especially for tight end, is you have to also keep in mind short-term value. Like if you have a tight end already and you're just like trying to draft the best available player, last year drafting a guy like Michael Mayer after he went to the Raiders, you had to know his value was going to take a hit and that you were in for the long haul because there's no chance he was going to be a top 2 target on a team with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow. Like, it just wasn't going to happen. So, like, you knew there was going to be a short-term hit in value for a player like that. You have to commit to taking these players at a certain level. And if your goal is to pick them and flip them, then don't draft tight ends and don't draft quarterbacks, right? Like, it's you don't get the most. There's so very rarely a CJ Stroud that it's just not the best way to get short-term value. Draft a running back if you want to pick and flip somebody. Draft a wide receiver.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. If Ryan, if you were still in the chat, hopefully you are, I'm going to go ahead and drop this board off of here so Andrew and I can talk about some of this free agent stuff that happened today real briefly before we get off of here. And Ryan, if you would, go ahead and post that draft board on Twitter for me, and let the good people know where that's at. But let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff that went on today and over the last 2 or 3 days. Let's start first with Jerry Jeudy going to Cleveland.
Yeah.
That was kind of an interesting move. A 5th and a 6th or a 6th and a 7th round pick for what was, I believe, a first rounder a few years ago. First of all, does this automatically make Jerry Jeudy the number 2 behind Amari Cooper in Cleveland?
So not automatic. I'll tell you, like, this is how crazy it is in hindsight with these dynasty drafts. Like, you remember it. I remember it, but I'm not sure everybody that's just getting in and really getting exciting now realizes the debate that was had between CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy. And people were still taking Jerry Jeudy. CeeDee Lamb went just ahead of Jeudy in the draft in the first round. The Cowboys took Lamb and the Broncos took Jeudy, and there were still debates on who should take 1 or 2. And people were still taking Jeudy over Lamb. Like, that was happening. That was a real thing that was going on. And now in hindsight, it's like, look at you now, right? It was like 1A, 1B. Even the people that liked Lamb acknowledged it was 1A, 1B, So, like, be very careful with that. And for me, I think that Jeudy does have a good chance to be the wide receiver 2 because Elijah Moore didn't really step up. The question is whether David Njoku is going to be the second target or Jeudy to me.
That was going to be my next question. Is
David
Njoku, you got to bring him up, right? Because, I mean, that is the tight end that didn't look so great with Deshaun Watson for the first, 6 games or whatever it was that they played together. And then when Watson went down again, just became Flacco's best friend.
Right. And I'll tell you, I have a concern because it wasn't just Flacco either. The other backups were also targeting Njoku at a higher level than Watson, right?
All 74 quarterbacks that Cleveland played last year outside of Watson
like Njoku better. Yeah. And it makes sense though, because we see this all the time with guys like Sam Howell, guys that play hero ball, right? So think about the guys that play hero ball. They don't like to dump it down. They don't like to take the short target. The coaches put them in situations to do that, right? So like Sam Howell didn't like throwing up to Jahan Dotson to grab, for grabs. He didn't like throwing it to the running back because he was going to figure it out. You know what I mean? And Kyler Murray does that too. And you look at Deshaun Watson, he doesn't want to take the dump downs. Now, so Watson's a problem for Njoku. The other problem is that the guy that designed the offense, and I know Kevin Stefanski obviously is a big part of that, and he does the play calling and stuff, so it might not change, but conditions were perfect for Njoku in terms of them calling screens for him. Only 2 tight ends got 20 or more screens last year. It was David Njoku with 20 and my guy Evan Engram with 21. Those are the top 2 in the league. So hey,
he's not just your guy. That's our guy.
Our guy. That's right.
Guy.
Sorry
there
about that. Yeah, our guy. You've been there every step of the way. So yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to leave you out.
You just dusted me to. I've been riding your coattails. I've been holding on to that coattail for so long.
And
you just like shook me off.
I did. Yo, I'm sorry, brother. Because I there's very few people that stuck with us, dude. Yeah. Very few, man. And dude, I had to go to battle. Lost all my Giants followers, right? But like, you know what? We made it through, persevered. But
look who's on top now, baby.
And look at that, dude. And the guys that are good, the guys that are really good in PPR and not amazing in other formats, you can almost always point to screens. One guy that routinely leads the league in screens as a tight end is Dallas Goedert. And you see it. He doesn't get the red zone targets, but he has a floor. That's what that is. And I'll tell you what, just as a side note, Alex Van Pelt going to the Patriots and Hunter Henry signing on, and not a lot of other pass catchers in that room, could see a lot of Hunter Henry screens for the rookie quarterback or whoever is quarterback there. If Flacco is the quarterback there, boy, Hunter Henry becomes interesting all of a sudden because he's very good in man-to-man, but hasn't really had the scheme for him. So Hunter Henry could be wheels up. But David Njoku, for me personally, my policy is this. If I'm in Dynasty and I'm competing now, I'm looking to upgrade at tight end. If my tight end is Njoku or Dalton Schultz or Jake Ferguson or somebody in the middle, I'm trying to get myself an elite option. If I can't, I'm going to stick with those guys.
What's perfect is if you have a Dalton Schultz, if you have a who else in that same tier, that Dalton Schultz tier,
Ferguson, Schultz.
Yeah, Schultz, those guys, you can probably add a second rounder right now and skyrocket yourself up in that tight end, because they are so volatile, right? And like Jack says, they are a fine wine. Some of them,
yeah.
Some of them.
Well, the thing is, it's like basically you can group them into 3 categories for Dynasty, right? There's the focal points, which is like Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, even Darren Waller, like obviously now falling off but like look at the way the Giants treated Darren Waller. When they traded for Darren Waller, they said the offense is being built around this player. We don't need to go out and get 2 or 3 or 4 more wide receivers. That's the plan. There's very few of those guys. And we don't even know for sure if Sam Laporte is going to be treated that way. We don't know for sure if Trey McBride's going to be treated that way. We want them to. But what happens if those teams go out and add 2 or 3 wide receivers and now all of a sudden they're not a top 2 target on the team? That's kind of scary, right? So that's the top tier. And I think Brock Bowers goes into that tier very quickly. I think Michael Pitts is already there where they consider him to be a top 2 target on the team. After that, you have a group of guys that are just their windows are going to open and close. Austin Hooper had a very brief window where it was open and he got peppered with targets with the Falcons and then it closed. I think Dalton Schultz's window with Nico Collins and Tank Dell, it's been open. It was open with the Cowboys. But like, what happens if we already know that with Nico Collins and Tank Dell back, it's going to be problematic for him. What happens if the Cowboys add one more pass catcher? What happens to Jake Ferguson? Does he get 102 targets again? It's hard to say, man. So,
it's you brought up Hero Ball a little bit ago, and something else that happened late last night. Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh. Talk about Hero Ball. We know he doesn't usually like to check the ball down. What does that do for Pat Freiermuth?
Right. I mean, now this is the battle. This is the battle that we have every year because there's so rarely teams that have 3 fantasy relevant pass catchers. It just doesn't happen that often. And when it does happen, it's usually because somebody got hurt. And in hindsight, we don't look at it. Like I brought up Austin Hooper. He's a perfect example. Austin Hooper was actually the second target on that team after Julio Jones. Calvin Ridley, as a rookie, was not really popping. And then when Austin Hooper got hurt, Calvin Ridley got 30 targets over the course of 3 games, 10 a game. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, Calvin Ridley, star. And when you look at the numbers at the end of the season, it looks like everyone was getting targets the whole time. That's not the truth. Right? To find a team that really had 3 guys that were all fantasy relevant in the same season, 3 or more guys, you got to look at like 2013 Peyton Manning, where he threw 55 touchdown passes, right? You got to look at teams that, and again, if you think Russell Wilson's going to throw 40 touchdown passes, sure, then of course you can like Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth, and 2 running backs to catch a football. But the reality is you got to pick at most 2 out of 3. If you're a Pat Freiermuth fan, you're rooting right now for Deontay Johnson to get traded, right? That's it. That's what you got to do, And I'll ask you this, Jay. Have you ever heard one person ever say that that Pat Freiermuth isn't good?
I haven't heard anybody say he's not good because I think everybody knows he is good.
Well, that's what makes tight end so hard in fantasy football because like it's so hard to sit here and say I think this is a good football player. I'm not going to draft him in my fantasy league. You know what I mean? Like we do it all the time, but like George Kittle's had those situations too, where it's like, well, I sit here and say this is the best 2A tight end in the league. He's a little inconsistent for me because it's
Coop,
like it's tough.
We've got over 400 sets of eyeballs on us right now between Twitter and YouTube and Twitch all together. I've got a few more questions I want to get through, but I also want to give them the chance. If you have any questions for Coop, please put those in the
Get 'em
chat
in.
now. We're going to go for about another 10 minutes or so, get these last few questions. Well, I say 10 minutes or so. It depends on how long Coop wants to talk about each of these players or systems. But
you know me, but coming
if you
into
got-
it, you know me, like before the show, I was like, man, I'm so busy. I'm gonna be able to. Now that we're talking, I'm like, let's just talk, dude.
Yeah.
However long. If people
So
have questions, we'll answer.
We'll definitely get through these, and if the chat has questions, put those in the chat for us. I'll try to get to those as well, as many of them as we can anyway. Tony Pollard signs with Tennessee. What does that do for Tajay Spears? These two players, very, very, very similar skill set, very similar in size. Which one of these pieces are going to be the asset in Dynasty, if either one of them are now?
That's the problem, is that, you know, the modern format for, especially for Dynasty, like everybody wants it to be Superflex tight end premium, and to have tight end premium, then you have to have some sort of PPR. There's no standard leagues where the tight ends are the only ones that get points for receptions, right?
Right.
So like, just the idea that PPR is involved means that you need your back to either be the every down back, which is incredibly rare, or you need your back to be the one that skews passing downs, bar none, right? So like, I look at this situation and it looks like they're going to either mix and match evenly, or Pollard's going to be the early down back with Tajay Spears as the pass down back, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, to me, the signing doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, Derrick Henry with Tajay Spears was a good combination. Tony Pollard, or even DeAndre Swift, who, you know, we just watched him as the early down back for the Eagles. That would have made some sense too, compared to this one. So I don't know. Very strange signing for me. But I'll give you an example of another signing with the running backs that just crushes the value of the other guy, in my opinion. And people are still going to like him, so you can trade him away. Is Austin Eckler went to the Commanders. Brian Robinson now is like, why would you throw it at Brian Robinson? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, you have one of the best pass catching backs of this generation now on the team. So every third down, every 2-minute drill is going to be Austin Eckler. You're going to have.
So what you just said is all of my, and when I say all, I mean all of my Brian Robinson shares.
They're in trouble, brother. They're in trouble. But
are butted?
Yeah, I will throw a butt in there. That, like, you know, he's probably still going to be the start. Like, on the first play of the season, Brian Robinson's probably going to be on the field because he'll be the early down back and he'll be the goal line back. But to have the goal line back, if they're kind of a pure early down back, you need the team to be real good, man. Like,
I was just going to say, though, you say he's going to be the goal line back and he's going to be the start of the season. The issue with that is
the whole year.
It's Washington.
That's the problem. You know? It's like you need like Garrett Blunt can get away with it on the Patriots because he scored 18 touchdowns. Right? He scored.
We're not talking about Jamal Williams in Detroit here.
Jamal Williams in Detroit is a great example. Like, that's exactly like if we said, okay, these were the two running backs on the Bengals, then I'd be like, okay, cool. You know, like, that's fine. Or even on the Chargers. Like, if Brian Robinson got moved onto the Chargers and it was Robinson and Eckler on the Chargers, I would say, okay, you know what? There's touchdowns to be had. But on this team, you need them to knock it out of the park with their quarterback pick. You need CJ Stroud you know what I mean? Like, they need to have a guy that is winning games right away. And I don't know. I'm not going to bet on that, dude. So I'll tell you what, if I could sell, the thing is, you can't sell Brian Robinson today. You just can't. You had to sell him. If you didn't sell him already, you need to wait for that price to cool down, because nobody is going to be Googling Brian Robinson's name and be excited to trade for him.
Just another great running back story right there. You know, with everything he went through last year to start the season, just to get Austin Eckler.
I know. And the thing is, you got to hold. I think you just hold, because I mean, he's still very young.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
Eckler, yeah. And again, Eckler could get hurt 2 weeks into the season, and now Brian Robinson is in your starting lineup every single week. You know?
Yeah, then the value jumps back up. Gabe Davis signs in Jacksonville, another weapon for Trevor Lawrence. Very similar to the Zay Jones. Interesting, I guess, to me. Is Gabe Davis an upgrade over Calvin Ridley? Number one, and are you in or out on Gabe Davis in Jacksonville?
I'm out on Gabe Davis. Honestly, they might still sign Calvin Ridley. So there is a deadline that people have been talking about, the 14th, the league year start. There's a possibility they were waiting for that to sign Ridley. I mean, they've made a lot of moves already, so I don't know if they're going to be able to bring him back, but they could still sign Ridley, which that would be a mess. But Me personally, I've never really been a Gabe Davis guy. I mean, and I've been pretty clear about that, that like his best comparable player is Zach Pascal, have athletically.
Yuck.
And yeah. And even in the 4-touchdown game versus the Chiefs, he didn't catch a single ball until Tyrann Mathieu got a concussion and left the game. But again, I don't want to do too much besmirching of Gabe Davis because I've already done plenty of it, dude. And I've, but the reality is this for fantasy football purposes, even if you love Gabe Davis, right? He just played 17 games. He played them alongside a rookie tight end, Dalton Kincaid, that was mixing and matching snaps with Dawson Knox, that missed the game himself. Dalton Kincaid did. And Dalton Kincaid still got more targets than Gabe Davis did in fewer games and fewer snaps. So in what world does Gabe Davis show up and get more targets than Evan Engram, who just had 114 receptions. He just had the fourth most targets of any player in the entire league, the most of any tight end by 19. Is Gabe Davis going to show up and have more targets than him? I don't think so. Is Gabe Davis going to show up and have more targets than Christian Kirk? I don't think so. So for me personally, Gabe Davis, I think he's going to be exactly Gabe Davis, which everyone looking at his stats right now, you can predict what that's going to be. 700, 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, because that's what he has every single season. Is that not the case?
But don't they have to get to like the second round of the playoffs in order for him to get that 4-touchdown game?
And then you need the safety to get hurt. You need the safety to get hurt in the second quarter, and then you get that touchdown game.
I want to get over here to Derek's quick question for you. Josh Jacobs signs with Green Bay. Now, the deal looks like it's a crazy deal, but our very own Joel Worth looked up. It's only a $12.5 million is guaranteed for his deal. So it's a 4-year deal, $48 million, only $12.5 million guaranteed. That also led to Aaron Jones getting released. But I want to look at more like the Raiders side of this. How much does this elevate Zamir White in fantasy, who 521 yards on 121 attempts over a 2-year period with the Raiders? Or is this the Raiders going, no, we have a running back that we like in this draft that we're going to go after?
So the thing is, like, again, the draft will decide that, but I would rather put my guy up against a rookie every day of the week, because we've seen them come on slow. We've seen, especially with this class, man, because like, what if they draft Jonathan Brooks? He's not even going to play to start the year. You know what I mean? And like, we've seen it time and time again. One of my favorite moves is betting on tight ends against rookie wide receivers, because you never know. And I'll bet on running backs. Like I watched Chris Carson, a deep day 3 guy, beat out Rashad Penny, a first-round pick. You know what I mean? It's like, I'll take that bet all day long over, DeAndre Swift coming in. So if you look at this whole group of guys right now, where it was like, Roschon Johnson got smoked, Tajay Spears got smoked. We've talked about a couple other here. Brian Robinson got hurt pretty bad. Zamir White's looking great right now. So is Ty Chandler, but we have to remember there's still some guys that need to find a home. Like, someone's going to sign Derrick Henry, right? Like, what if the Raiders sign Derrick Henry, within the next hour, right?
Aaron Jones
is going to land. Yeah, I mean, Aaron Jones is going to land in one of those teams and be a problem too. So, like, I don't know. I'm not victory lapping just yet, but the fact that he avoided Josh Jacobs coming back, the fact that he avoided Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, like the tier 2 guys, Tony Pollard, Austin Eckler is huge. Like, I'd much rather have Derrick Henry show up than Austin Eckler, because at least now Zamir White can be in the chair ready to catch balls. So yeah, Zamir White right now looking like one of the day one winners, man.
So going back to the actual signing of Jacobs, how good would it have looked if it was Jacobs and Aaron Jones in that backfield together? Unfortunately, we won't get to see that, but I thought as soon as that deal went down, I was like, oh my Lord, this is what a powerful backfield this is going to be. But what do you think for Derek's sake? How do you feel about Jacobs now in Green Bay?
I think it's incredible. Like, because you gotta remember, like, with Aaron Jones, a great player. He's got some injury issues, but so is Josh Jacobs. For them to look at this and say, and I know Aaron Jones, they could save a lot of money by releasing him, but for them to say, because I'm sure they were talking to Aaron Jones the entire time and said, hey, by the way, just so you know, if you want to restructure your deal to a deal that looks kind of like this, we would love to keep you here. They decided to go through the process of releasing him and bringing in somebody else, that has to be a vote of confidence for what they believe Josh Jacobs is. So whatever you were penciling Aaron Jones in, you can pencil that in plus. This isn't a situation where they released a guy and then signed the guy for cheaper. This is a situation where they spent just as much money in cap space to bring in a guy that they believe is going to perform well, man. Like they signed the top guy, one of the top two guys. So I'll tell you, I'm excited for it, man. It's a great offense, and I believe in the quarterback, and I believe in the weapons and the ability to get the ball down the field.
We'll get to Jack's question here in just a minute. We just got some breaking news. Jacoby Brissett headed to your New England Patriots. 1 year, $8 million. Is with him and Zappy, are we now looking at Marvin Harrison Jr. going third overall? Thoughts right away?
So I'd say yes, and I would love it. I would love it because if Jacoby Brissett and Zappy and whoever fall on their face, then you're going to be able to pick high in the draft again. You know what I mean? We've seen this happen. The thing with Brissett is that we know that he can run this offense because we've seen it with Alex Van Pelt with the Browns, right? And I won't be disappointed if they take Marvin Harrison. I wouldn't be disappointed if they took Brock Bowers because I'm a big tight end guy, but some people might. I wouldn't be disappointed if they drafted a quarterback. Like, because now you have a guy who understands, he understands who he is, right? Like Jacoby Brissett this is his last time probably being a starter or being involved as a starter. But at a certain point for these veterans, now you're just seeing how many times you can make $1 million to be a coach as part of the team. Brian Hoyer is like, he will become an NFL coach once teams stop paying him $1 million because when you're a coach, you get paid what? Like, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000 at best. Right. So it's like, yeah, of course. Davis Webb did that. He straight up said that. He was like, the Giants were like, so the Bills were like, you can be our quarterback coach. It was like, why would I be your quarterback coach when the Giants are going to pay me $1 million? Mm-hmm. And he just went and did that for a couple more years, right? Like some of these guys are that smart. Kevin O'Connell, that smart, that for, he was a coach. He played quarterback for as long as you can. That's Jacoby Brissett's going to be one of those guys. But I don't have no problem with him starting. I have no problem with them drafting a wide receiver, and I have no problem with them taking a quarterback if that's the plan. It's new regimes have to plan for the future,
Well, and I think honestly, like I said when the question was, I think this leads to them taking Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
That would be the move to make right here, unless for some crazy reason, and I know it's not Bill Belichick anymore, the Pats would normally move back out of this position and just collect draft capital, where I think this year is the year to go and attack it.
Right. I mean, you could move back and get – the thing is, like, what if the Giants want a quarterback at 3 and you move back to 6?
I think Marvin Harrison's off the board at 4 then.
Of course he is, but like I'm saying, what if in their mind, like if in your mind, if Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze, like because even the Chargers could take, like you have to love Rome Odunze to do that, because if they go 4 or 5, then you're kind of smoked. I would just take Joe Alt or whatever, and you live, right? But like it's not as sexy. But I don't know. I mean, like I could see the Patriots trading back and taking a quarterback. Like what if they love? And again, I'm of the mindset, like, I played quarterback in high school. Like, it doesn't matter but like, that does, like, I look at the quarterback position and how difficult it is and how cerebral it is. And I would never turn around and say, I can watch film and tell you which of these guys are going to be good. There's so much that goes in interviews, so much that goes in this other stuff, that I just have respect for that process, to the point where if they want to take JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix or Spencer Radler, and they really love those guys and want to trade back, I don't care. As a Patriots fan, I'll support that decision. And as a fantasy football gamer, I look at draft capital as one of the key indicators. People hate it because they love to plant flags and they love to be first, but the best fantasy analysts acknowledge that it should be part of the equation, in my opinion.
Every bit of it. Jack wants to know, what are his Cowboys going to do for RB1 and wide receiver 2? I mean, you've got an Aaron Jones still out there who is home in Texas. I think he's linked to both Dallas and Houston, with Houston shipping Singletary away. What are your thoughts here with the Cowboys? Is it Derrick Henry like a no-brainer here, or is it Aaron Jones?
No, the problem you're going to run into with Derrick Henry is this, and Aaron Jones for the Cowboys, is that you got to look around at who's making the move. After day one, you got to look at who's making the moves and who's not, right? So the Dolphins, now that they've let a bunch of people leave, and the Cowboys, they're in line to collect a bunch of compensatory picks, right? If you go out and sign players to multi-year deals, that can cancel some of those picks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like Tyron Smith probably going to be leaving. I mean, I hate to say it, Jack, but like half of your players now play for Washington now after today, right? Like
Yeah, the other half are still free agents.
the other half, like Dorrance Armstrong is gone. Like, and like if you want to collect that comp pick, you'll cancel it out by signing. Like, so a Dorrance Armstrong level contract, you can get probably like a 4th or 5th round comp pick back. And if you sign Derrick Henry, now you've canceled that pick. So it actually, you're basically trading a 4th round pick to sign Derrick Henry. So I actually don't think they're going to sign any big name free agents unless a ton of guys leave, right? And they have to confirm that's happening first before they do that. So like they're out of the market for those guys right now. Plus, they already told us they're going to take a cost conservative approach to running back. So I think that means draft or trade is how they get an RB1 or RB2 or wide receiver 2. That's at this stage, that's probably the only approach that's going to make sense for them, unless they can get like a Calvin Ridley. Because I mean, I just don't think there's enough free agent wide receivers out there that are even better than Brandon Cooks. I mean, like, what are you going to bring in? Curtis Samuel? I get Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd. I mean, I'm not sure those guys are better than Brandon Cooks.
So it's Rico Dowell season.
I mean, he's also a free agent, so they got to bring him back.
Yeah, but they can re-sign him without
they can re-sign
the pick. You know what I mean?
So Aaron Jones actually is kind of interesting because now that I think of it, Aaron Jones was released, which means he doesn't count against the comp pick formula. So Aaron Jones is on the market. Aaron Jones possible. Trade for Joe Mixon, trade for Nick Chubb. You know what I mean? Like those. Anyone that gets released is now definitely on the Cowboys' radar.
Yeah, I think they're going to have competition for Aaron Jones. I just truly think that. Well, let's end it here with one quick question for you, or one last question, I guess. Best landing spot for a couple free agents that are left. Derrick Henry, what's the best landing spot for him?
The best landing spot for everybody is the one that everyone's predicting, the Ravens, man. The
Ravens.
Just because it plays right into his skill set, in that you don't need creative dump downs from the Lamar Jackson, like scrambling around throwing it to him. All you need is the RPO, which Henry's great at, and screens, which Todd Monken actually likes the RB screens. So what they do is just like perfect for what Derrick Henry does. You don't need him to run like wheel routes and stuff in this offense. He's not good at that. It's a perfect spot for him. The best overall spot for a running back is still the Houston Texans.
I don't need him at the Texans. I need my guy back on the field. I mean, Dameon Pierce was doing so good in his rookie year out of nowhere. But like you said, I mean, he was a 4th round draft pick.
Yeah, I think it was honestly pass blocking that was the issue. And
yes, it is.
He showed improvements, and Devin Singletary got signed to the Giants. So, I mean, it's not crazy. Dameon Pierce, like, it's not crazy to suggest that he could have a bounce back here. But we need to have fingers crossed there, because I don't know. The Texans, I love that offense for a running back. I've been rooting for a high end back to go there.
One we didn't talk about real briefly, if you would, Saquon Barkley to the Eagles, staying in division, moving just south. He basically took the train, I guess, today to his new home. What does Saquon Barkley to the Eagles mean for us as Barkley managers?
I mean, it's not the number one ideal spot in my opinion, because like I said, they don't call a lot of screens to the running back. Nick Sirianni doesn't, and Jalen Hurts is a hero ball guy, right? And the tush push, like those are rushing touchdowns that we normally should be getting, but like he's probably going to run for like 6 yards a carry with the RPO and everything going on there. So it's hard to hate it. To me, that was always a middle of the pack landing spot for fantasy, because they're not going to ask him to, if there's a pass interference in the end zone for that team, they just do the tush push, right? Whereas other teams, like if you're on the Lions, Jared Goff has zero interest in taking the ball himself, QB sneak or not, right? Like those touchdowns all belong to David Montgomery. So I don't think it's the number one landing spot, but I think that he should probably be going like Barkley's going to go in the second round of every redraft league at worst, and possibly even first round now. No,
I mean, I think he moved up definitely.
I
mean,
wanted him to
we
go.
were
I wanted
saying,
him to go to the Texans. That's where I wanted to go.
yeah, but I think after last year with the debacle that was the running back, free agents slash whatever that debacle was, the owners don't want to pay them.
No.
This year was the complete opposite, thanks to a nice spike in the the salary cap there. They got an extra $10 million that they weren't expecting. And I think the owners were like, okay, just go get me a running back at this point. Because those were the ones that flew off the board. The ones that we were having the questions about, the Saquon Barkleys, the Josh Jacobs last year, they were within the first couple of going off the board.
Yeah. And a lot of times what happens in free agency is the levy needs to break, right? Where it's like,
just one.
At running back, it did, and it's been awesome. At wide receiver, it hasn't. We've seen Gabe Davis and then like Devin Duvernay, but he was signed as a return man, right? Like offensive tackle, we're waiting on like Tyron Smith and Trent Brown and those guys. It's like they're not signing. Whereas like some of these other positions, it's like once one guy signs it, like dude, edge, I love it. Edge rusher, we got the top guys, got tagged, and then some big deals came out. All the defensive line guys signed today because the top guys signed. And we knew what the market was set at. Like I love seeing that. So for these other positions, now we got to wait. It's the waiting game at wide receiver and at an offensive tackle. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, it was an amazing day. A frenzy like I don't remember in the recent past. You know what I mean? It was absolutely 5 minutes after it went to legal tampering, we had a contract, and it was like every 5 minutes it seemed like there was another either side of the ball. So I know you have been working on a free agency article, and it's like a continuous article. You're always updating this article. Tell the good people where they can find that and the rest of your work at.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you just follow me on Twitter at Coupe Fiasco, what I've been doing, I wrote an article on every single team this offseason with what I think their plans are, where their cap space is, all this stuff. And then what I'm doing now is just every time a free agent signs, any of them, I'm doing a quick note in our tracker at fantasyalarm.com that just says what they signed for and what my thoughts are. The fantasy relevant ones, I'll also probably throw a tweet out there. You know me, Jay, got to stay on top of the meme game this time of year. So if you just stay on my Twitter, that's where, the fantasy relevant stuff, all that's coming out. And then if you go just kind of check out the tracker from time to time, at the end of the day, you'll just see, who signed recently, what they signed for. So we're on top of all of it, Jay, man. And I just want to say, dude, thank you for having me on, man. I love this concept, dude. Just come in, do a draft, see what people are thinking about, see what people are doing. That's a beautiful thing, man. I'm gonna stay tuned. I've already subscribed to Club Fantasy, but I will stay tuned to what you guys got going on with the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Coop said, subscribe, hit the like button for us over at Club Fantasy FFL over there on YouTube, Twitch. Make sure you're following us over there on Twitter as well. If you are not following Coop over on Twitter, go change that at Coop A Fiasco. I mean, a phenomenal follow. Dude knows his stuff about a lot of things, but he really knows his tight ends. So make sure you're definitely following Coop there. Man, Coop, first episode of Mocking with the Stars. You were a star for sure. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure all of y'all hit that thumbs up for us. Coop, tell the good people good night.
Good night, folks.
Good night, everybody. Enjoy.